Hello, everyone. My name is Jeff Good. I'm the Chief Education Technology Officer for PBS Western Reserve in Kent, Ohio. And I'm going to spend a couple minutes with you today and talking about what I think is one of Google's most unused tools, which is Google Drawing. And especially as you're migrating into the online world, Google Drawing is a great resource for you to integrate with your students, whether it's a face-to-face, virtual face-to-face, or whether you're doing an online course. So let's spend a little bit of time and talk about it. First of all, I'm going to share my screen now. And I will talk a little bit about how to get started in Google Docs, and then some of the tips and tricks and what you can expect when you're working in the Google Doc environment. So first of all, I'm going to create a brand new Google Doc. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm in my Google Drive right now, and I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to go to More, and I'm going to go to my Google Drawing. Now, when your Google Drawing starts up, it's very much like Google Drive and Google Docs and Google Spreadsheet. You start off with an untitled drawing. I'm just going to call this, we're going to do a drawing test, right? And as you see, you've got pretty much a blank slate whenever you start a Google Drawing. And if we work our way through some of the features of Google Drawing, you'll see that you can do everything. It looks very familiar to you. I often use the term transferable skills. But here are all, once again, you can do a new drawing. You can open up one. You can download that drawing if you want to. I can email this drawing as an attachment. I've got all different, once again, the version history. So if you've got your students working in this environment, I have the ability to do a page setup. Now it defaults to a page setup that's 4x3, and you can do that if you're doing a drawing, and let's say you're using it to create a flyer. You can change that to 8.5 by 11. Obviously, you've got your edit features, so you can add everything, your undo, redo. You can do your pasting, you can do your duplicate. I've got a zoom feature, so let's say I'm working on something. I can do all kinds of guides, vertical guides. I can snap items to the guides. It allows me to insert images, text box, shapes, tables, charts, you name it. You can add that to a Google Drawing. And this allows you to format. So you can do your fill colors. Here's your arrange feature. So if you've got different items, you can move ones to the top of the pile or to the bottom of the pile. You've got your spelling and your linked objects, all of that. And always, you've got your get help. So if you're in the middle of something with Google Drawing and you want to get some help on what to do next, you can go in your search window here. So this is our Google Drawing. Now, how can I do some things with Google Drawing? Well, first of all, one of the things that's great for Google Drawing is we talk about graphic organizers. And it may be something simple like maybe a flow chart for your students. So for instance, if I wanted to create basically a simple flow chart for my students, I can lay my boxes in, and as far as a graphic organizer, those students can take, and within those boxes, they could put together a flow chart that says, if we're talking about making a peanut butter sandwich, buy bread, and then, so you can see, that's an example of a graphic organizer. If you've got some ideas for different graphic organizers, Google Drawing is a great resource to create those. The next thing I'll talk about a little bit is going to be graphic posters and graphic images. Very easily, or rather interactive posters and interactive drawings. But I could very easily go through here, and let's just say, for instance, I'm going to search the web, and I want to do butterfly. I now can create this butterfly, drop this image in place, and then I can have my students talk about this image. As I've worked with other teachers, sometimes what I set up, if you've got multiple students that are giving their input on certain things, it's always best if you're looking at an interactive poster or an interactive drawing. You can add any sort of shapes if you wanted to. So you could add some interactive shapes. You could do some call outs. So it really allows you to have your students work and create some really cool interactive posters or interactive drawings. Another great feature when you're working in the Google Docs environment or Google Drawing environment is this whole concept of a digital storytelling. So let's say, for instance, I'm going to search the web here, and I want to begin to create a digital story. So let's just type in this for a minute. And so I'm going to create a interactive comic strip, for lack of a better term, or photo strips. And I can lay in these images. And imagine being able to create a comic strip based on these images. So it really adds some interactive features, and you can have your students work together on creating this comic strip and then captioning the comic strip accordingly. So that just gives you an idea. That's back to that creating a comic strip very easily if you wanted to make it easier on your students. I can sit here and create a box below each of these images where you could add your narration, and I can begin to lay those boxes in place based upon those images. You could do, if you wanted to, you could add your interactive graphics or your graphics, your shapes into that. So that's an example of what you say would be kind of a photo comic strip that your students can work on. Keep in mind, much like your Google Docs, any other of your Google apps, you have the ability to share this drawing with your students. So remember that as you're building that. Let's talk a little bit about using this as a interactive whiteboard. And as you see, it's very easy to put something like that together. And as you know, you can do anything from, I'm not very good at this, but your students can draw on this, write their name. It's about as good as I get on my name. They can create your images and lay those in place. I have done in the past, I'm going to go through here and I'm going to look at some equation stuff. I've done an interactive tic-tac-toe board for your students. So if I cut and copy all the X's, and then let's say I create, so I've got some X's there now, and if I want to take and add some other shapes in here, somewhere I'll find an O, I'm sure. We'll just do this real quick. So you can really very quickly and easily create an interactive tic-tac-toe board. Oftentimes what I'll do, if you want your students to play with this, is very easily I can insert some lines, and then of course you create. Remember, you're much like when you're editing a Google Doc, you're doing this in real time. Imagine what else you can do. You can do a word wall if you want. So for instance, if some folks, if you're maybe strategizing with your students a little bit about maybe some subjects for some books, very easily you could insert some images. So let's say shape, and I do some blocks, and very easily my students can begin to say, you may say title of book, and cut and copy these different cards all over the place. So your students can create another block, or they can go to this block and go Control C, Control V, and it basically copies and pastes that in there. And maybe this is Jim, and Jim will say, so that's an example of different ways you can use Google Drawing as an interactive whiteboard. So think about it this way when you're thinking about using it as a whiteboard. What are some things that you're doing now, maybe with paper, or you're looking at a Google Doc, and let's make it more interactive by making it a whiteboard. Also, we talk about manipulatives and being able to bring up different images and being able to mark up that image. So if we look at something like um, spring, and we start to add some different things on our document here, on our drawing rather. Your students can interact with this drawing. Another favorite thing I love to do in this world of interactive is to, so for instance, if I wanted to take and put up a poem and let my students talk a little bit about what they think of the poem. What I do here is I do a double click and I copy the image address, and then I go back to my drawing, and I'm just going to insert that poem, that image of the poem. So I'm going to add this image. It's going to ask me by my URL. So I'm just going to paste that in, and I'm going to do an insert. And what's really cool about this is if you want to do it this way is what I love to do is I love to insert boxes. That way your students aren't all over the place adding what they think of this poem. So what you can do here is just take your boxes and just say, this is for Jim. And if I do a Control-C, Control-V, this is for Holly. It's easier said than done when I'm not doing this in real time, huh? And then just tell your students that that's the box that they are to reply or to add their comments about this poem. You can do it with an assignment. You could drop if you wanted to, you could drop a Google Doc in there and have them work together. So that's just another opportunity to use Google Drawing. You know, another really cool option when you're dealing with Google Drawing is, I'm going to clean this slate out here, is creating a timeline. So I'm just going to add a line, and this is going to be my line, and let's say we're going to talk about space program. So I'm going to insert here, and I'm just going to quickly just put a shape up here, and I'm just going to say, so if I do this as space program, and then you could have your students create a timeline based upon the space program. So for instance, if I wanted to look and see, okay, let's start talking with, I'm going to look up, oh, I got the wrong one. I'm going to do a search here. Now keep in mind too, and as you see that come up on the screen, you can see that it'll also look at your Google Drive. So any images you have in there. But let's go, and maybe what we start with is we look at the Gemini, and we throw that in place. And we might want to say, I gotta get my image back here, huh? Okay. And let's say we want to look at Apollo, and I'm sure I'm doing these all out of order. And we look at that. So very easily you can see you could have, but keep in mind, this can all be done interactively. Your students could be working on this in real time from their homes using their Google account. We might want to say, so here you can go through and really create that timeline, sizing up your images, and creating a timeline that your students can work on together. Keep in mind that's creating a timeline using a Google Drawing. Totally interactive. Once again, it's how you share here. If I share this with my students, what you want to do is you want to make sure those that you share to have editing features. Another thing is you get your whole class together if you want to, and you could begin to develop maybe what your option is you assign one person to start a conversation. And so what they can do is add an image and then share that image, and then other folks can add to that. So let's back to, it's kind of like that interactive poster, so to speak, because when they're done, they're basically creating a work of art, for lack of a better term. And another thing we start talking about, I touched on it a bit ago. Started talking about those informational, those tutorial. You know, I've worked with students and teachers where the project was to design a tutorial for making a peanut butter sandwich. So what you may do is you may do it in shapes, and you're going to create, you know, your different shapes, and you're going to start with, you know, buy bread, get a knife, spread the peanut butter on bread slice number one. This is a great tool to use in order to get your folks up and going, and using it to basically create a nice little tutorial. So that's all I have right now as it relates to the interactive world of Google Drawings. And I know that as you're moving into this world of more and more online education, I hope you found this important to you, and I hope you find it useful. And I'm always available. Once again, it's Jeff Good. And so your contact code for this hour, your contact hour code is DWBD. That's all capitals. And what you'll need to do is go to the link listed below, the goo.gl link, and that's for a Google form, and submit that Google form with that contact hour code, and you will be eligible for contact hours. So once again, I'm going to come back here. I'm going to stop presenting. And I'm going to thank you for the time today. If you have any other questions, once again, my name is Jeff Good. I'm with PBS Western Reserve in Kent, Ohio, and I wish you the best of luck. And if you need any other assistance, the Ohio EdTech agencies are around to help you with that. Thanks so much, and have a great day.